Welcome back to these videos, guys. My name is Cameron and we are finally back reviewing comics again on YouTube. It's been 3 long months since I last made a video, and obviously it's because of university. I have completely finished university forever, so that will never ever happen again. But I had to do so many all-nighters in a row. But I'm back, university's done, so that will never happen again, and it's all done and finished. So let's get into these reviews and let's get this Ultimate Spider-Man out of the way. Alright guys, so it's so good to be back. Ignore the light on the right side of the screen because the window is open, so light is probably going to change with the sun on that side. But yeah, we are actually reviewing Ultimate Spider-Man issue 78 today, and it has been so long since the last issue. So let's jog your memories a little bit. In the previous issue, Spider-Man had a little bit of a scuffle with Nick Fury, punching him in the face and eventually swinging off. Nick Fury said that he's going to take away Spider-Man's spider powers, and of course we had that inevitable bit at the end with Mary Jane, where Peter Parker doesn't really trust Mary Jane anymore, and so he broke up with her. Pretty much. We've also got Harry Osborn, who is in fact still alive at the end of the issue, so his character's return will probably come around sooner than later. So this next issue with Ultimate Spider-Man issue 78 is going to be focusing on the perspective of Mary Jane and how that's affecting Mary Jane with what Peter said to her and his actions towards her and stuff like that. So this is probably, in my opinion, one of the issues where you are actually going to like Mary Jane again and really appreciate her genuine character when it comes down to her liking Peter Parker. It's going to be really interesting, and as I've already said, we really need to get into this issue because it's been 3 months. Let's get this review out of the way. I'm sure you guys are dying to see it, so let's go. So opening up the issue and jumping into the very first few pages of Ultimate Spider-Man issue 78, it's picking up with Mary Jane being super upset with the breakup between her and Peter Parker. Now, what you've got to remember is that Peter Parker didn't break up with Mary Jane because he doesn't like her or anything along those lines. It's more because sooner or later Mary Jane is going to get herself killed by being with Spider-Man, and that is not a form of responsibility that Peter Parker is willing to take. A good example of this was when Peter told Mary Jane to stay away from Harry Osborn, and then a couple of issues later, Mary Jane was hanging out personally with Harry Osborn. And of course that ended with Norman Osborn being the Green Goblin and all this crazy stuff, and Mary Jane inevitably being in danger. So I think Peter Parker thinks he's doing the right thing by just breaking up with her and getting her out of his life. But of course Mary Jane is having an incredibly hard time with that, more specifically because she doesn't know the main reason as to why Peter did it. But I think it's quite evident that both characters are finding it quite difficult, especially with this situation that Peter Parker's just put himself in, where he's just stormed out of the classroom. And what I love about the issue is that you almost get like a sense that Peter Parker maybe even hates Mary Jane. Now of course we know that he technically doesn't, because of course he loves her so much and blah blah blah. But in this issue, you really get the sense that he just despises her so much. And Mary Jane's character is perceived in such a way within this issue that you actually feel like, as the reader, that it is indeed Mary Jane's fault for being in this situation in the first place. So anyway, moving on, something else that I find so interesting about the issue is the way each character is written in such a way where it's pretty much revolving around Mary Jane and her heartbreak over this situation. And I think it's just so great that the comic is written in such a way to the point where you as the reader can actually relate to what's actually going on in the issue, especially if you've been through like a breakup or a high school breakup or something along those lines. You know exactly what Mary Jane is going through. Like, your friends try and take you out, but you don't want to be doing anything, you don't want to be going anywhere. You're just kind of miserable all the time, and it's just awesome how the comic can make you relate to such a thing like that. Now of course within this issue we also have a brand new love interest known as Mark Raxton, and I know what you guys are thinking as a Spider-Man fan, as a Peter Parker and Mary Jane fan, and as a reader of this comic. As soon as this guy shown any interest in Mary Jane, I automatically hated him, because I was just like, it's Spider-Man and Mary Jane and Peter Parker, anything that comes between those two characters and you are just going to hate them so much. But I feel like the comic does really well of you actually liking Mark Raxton. Now I've got to admit, at first I didn't like him, but he seems like a really genuine guy who just really likes Mary Jane. He doesn't seem like an idiot like Flash Thompson. It doesn't seem like he's got any vendetta against Peter Parker. He's noticed that Mary Jane has finally broken up with her boyfriend, and so he wants to try his luck and finally have that chance to try and date Mary Jane, because I'm presuming that he's maybe liked her for a while, but obviously she's been in a relationship and now she's not in a relationship, he can actually go for it and find out for himself if he can actually start dating her. So for that reason, I actually respect his character quite a lot and don't see him as any major threat to the relationship of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Now, moving throughout the issue and getting through those pages, I think something that's quite recurring throughout this issue is that the fact that Mary Jane is dating Peter Parker, Spider-Man, she will never be able to get away from Spider-Man. Like, if she breaks up with Peter Parker forever, she will see Spider-Man and Peter Parker everywhere. So for example, earlier on in the issue, Mary Jane thought that she saw Peter Parker at that dining place and obviously it wasn't him, but she then goes to this gig and actually sees someone dressed in a Spider-Man costume and instantly thinks that it's the real Spider-Man Peter Parker. So what I'm saying is that no matter what, Mary Jane will always see Spider-Man fighting bad guys on the TV or in a movie or something along those lines, and so that's going to be extremely difficult for Mary Jane simply because she'll never be able to get away from it entirely. Anyway, as you can see on screen, Mary Jane has got a lift home in Mark Raxton's car, and of course, any lift home from a boy and a girl always leads to a goodnight kiss or something along those lines, and that is exactly what happens. Now, of course, Mary Jane isn't over Peter Parker, so it doesn't last very long, but I'm going to be quite honest here, guys. It was actually quite refreshing to have this kind of situation pop up once again in an Ultimate Spider-Man comic, because we haven't really had situations like this happen recently between Peter Parker and Mary Jane just because of what's been going on with Green Goblin, etc. So it was nice to be able to just kind of forget about everything else and the Spider-Man stuff, and it was just a connection between two characters in the pages. And I actually really missed that in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. It was really refreshing, and so I'm actually really glad that that happened in this comic. But it also brings out the absolute die-hard love that Mary Jane has for Peter Parker, and it is so awesome because it really shows that Mary Jane does truly care for Peter Parker and is just fully dedicated to proving that she's worthy of his love and his trust. And Mary Jane is just, she's back in the good books now. I think she's just amazing, and I can't wait to see what is going to happen. Obviously, I've already read every single issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, so I know, but I just can't wait to get to it. It's so good. So that was the end of Ultimate Spider-Man issue 78, and one of my favourite things throughout the issue was the theme of the comic was primarily based around what makes Peter Parker so special, and the comic focused on Mary Jane in a way where, to the point where she actually answered those questions at the end of the issue. Now, as I've already said at the beginning of this video, Mary Jane is a primary focus on this comic. Everything about this comic is just based around her and how she's dealing with this breakup with Peter Parker. And as you've probably noticed, the entire school pretty much knows that those two characters have broken up. And I think that's just because they are such an unlikely kind of relationship in the, you know what high school's like something happens and everyone like freaks out and there's all this gossip and everything. And I think just because these two characters have broken up is such a major thing, because as Flash Thompson said, Mary Jane is like a super hot character and Peter Parker is like everyone thinks he's a nerd, so it just seems really strange for Peter Parker to be going out with Mary Jane. But of course, it's Mary Jane and Peter Parker, so as a Spider-Man fan, it's really cool. Now, one thing that I would like to point out is that the love interest in this comic is actually a really, really likable person. Like, he's not some kind of idiot that's trying to move in on Mary Jane, even though he was, like, in a way, competition to Peter Parker. As a comic book reader, I felt like he was actually welcomed into the comic quite nicely, just because he wasn't an idiot. I also really like the focus on how Mary Jane kept seeing Peter Parker everywhere she went, but then later on when she went to that gig, she also saw Spider-Man there, and I think the comic is just really putting across that Spider-Man is a public character. So you could have broken up with Peter Parker, but then during the day you might see Spider-Man swing past in the street. So it seems like she's never really going to get away from Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Like, they're always going to be there. So of course that's kind of like a restriction on the relationship, because if you do end up breaking up with Spider-Man, you are always going to see him, whether it's on TV, whether it's on the news. But I feel like she actually dealt with it really well, and I especially liked how she wants to win Peter Parker's trust back and really dedicate herself to that task of earning Peter Parker's love back as well. But as I've already said, Kitty Pryde is coming into the Ultimate Spider-Man comics pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. I know some of you guys who are especially X-Men fans would love Kitty Pryde to come into this, because one of the main problems was that Kitty Pryde, when she did come into it, you was kind of like, is she going to stay around? Is she just like a one-issue thing? But Kitty Pryde does genuinely become a significant character in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, so yeah, that's something that we can look forward to. But guys, that is the end of this review. Now, as for what I would give it, I'm kind of leaning more towards an 8 or a 9 out of 10, but I can't really decide, so I'm just going to give it like an 8 and 9 out of 10 if you can do both. Yeah, I'm going to do both. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below, because the next issue is bringing in the Warriors, and if I'm going off the top of my head, I think it involves Black Cat and Elektra. I can't be too sure, but of course it might involve Daredevil and Moon Knight, and I'll have to go back and see before I review the issue. But yeah, it's a lot to look forward to. So guys, let me know what you thought in the comment section below about me returning, about this issue. What did you think of Mary Jane as a character? Let me know. Don't forget to hit the like button on this video, hit the subscribe button, follow me on Twitter and Instagram to stay up to date on everything The Ultimate Spider-Man and these videos. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. See you later.